been a great honor today to have Mr. Curt McClellan to join our interview. And first, thank you so much. I know that you are very busy. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Since 2008, he has been Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer with ClubCorp, the largest owner and operator of private golf and country club. Prior to that, he has been Vice President of Finance and Controller at FedEx Office and Printing Service. He has also extensive experience in many retail-oriented multi-store companies. He's also a brilliant father, husband, and friend in life. So do you want to learn how he developed his career and how does private sports and club operate in the U.S.? And do you want to know how he has such a great work-life balance? So now let's start our interview. Very successful career. Would you like to share with your experiences? How do you get into the sports and membership industry? And what's your daily responsibility as a CFO at ClubCorp?
So I started here in 2008 and really came because I had a multi-unit, multi-state, multi-country background already. And that was really important to ClubCorp when they were looking for a CFO. So I had the background really that they were looking for. The company at that time was owned by a private equity firm. Our business started back in 1957. So this year is a 60-year anniversary for our business. And so the company had always been owned by a family. And the family sold to the equity firm in 2008. And so with that came a lot of change, and the company wanted to make some adjustments within the finance team. So I was fortunate enough, blessed enough to be part of that change at that point in time. And really, I think the big thing for the company was, instead of running every club, today we have over 200 golf and country clubs or business clubs, but instead of running every club like a separate business, there was the thought that if we ran common areas like accounting or finance from a centralized point of view rather than from each location being its own, that there would be a lot of efficiencies to be gained. And so that was part of what I was tasked with doing, was coming in and making that transition from having a decentralized program into a centralized, very efficient operation from a finance and accounting perspective. So that's kind of the reason that I came and what the company was hoping to find in me.
So maybe at the beginning of your responsibility, maybe gather a lot of accounting information at that time?
Yeah, it's interesting because in my role, I'm the Chief Financial Officer here. So for me, that encompasses a number of things. It encompasses all of the IT, so all of IT, all of accounting, finance, risk management, so all of the programs around insurance, things like that, and managing the risk of the company falls under me as well. And so it's a fairly large area. And so the main thing wasn't really, did I know enough about accounting or finance? It's really, did I have a vision for what we could do and accomplish? And how well could I identify the right talent to take the company to the next level? And or work through the talent that was here. I was really fortunate because there were some great people that were already here. And so being able just to work with them, and really by working together, I think is how we've been able to accomplish what we've been able to do.
I see. So do you have any interesting experiences or challenging experiences at ClubCorp?
Yeah, there's been a lot of really challenging experiences. I would say, when I first started, we were owned by a private equity firm, and so we were a private company. And when part of the goal was, when an equity firm buys a company, one of the things they want to do is they want to recognize a return on their investment, and eventually they're going to sell the company or sell their interest in the company. And so for us, we are the world's largest private club owner-operator. And so for this industry. And so for us, there's not a lot of people that would come in and just buy our company and fold us into their organization, because we're the largest at what we do anyway. And so what that meant was the exit for the equity firm was most likely going to be an IPO, an initial public offering. So to take the company from a private status to a public status. So we took a couple of steps at that. In 2010, we issued public debt, which meant we had to start complying with a lot of the regulatory requirements and filing our financial statements with the SEC for debt holders. But that's not a very complex filing. I mean, it's detailed, but it's not really complex. And that was really challenging, though, taking a company that had been so decentralized and then creating a very unified and appropriate SEC kind of appropriate environment was pretty difficult to do. But we had a great team. We were able to accomplish that. And then in 2013, we actually did an IPO. And so our IPO happened. Our ticker symbol, we traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Our ticker symbol was MYCC. And that experience was really interesting. A lot more difficult than it was just to take the debt public. A lot more involved. The control environment and the Sarbanes-Oxley environment, which I know we all study in books and we try to learn about. And let me just say, it was so much more difficult to actually put into practice. We spent over $4 million just to put our control environment in place. And that was as we moved from a SOX 404 A environment, which is a less strenuous environment, to a SOX 404B environment, and we had to do it in like a 4-month time period. So it was a really difficult time and a difficult transition. At that same time, we made our largest acquisition of our history. So we bought a 50 club portfolio from another company, and folded that into our business. And so that caused us to have to change our IT environment dramatically, which changed our SOX and control environment dramatically. And so really a couple of super challenging years. And then as we were a public company and now I was spending probably half my time either in New York or Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, just in the different cities where we had stockholders and investors. So a tremendous amount of time spent working with investors and explaining why our company is a good investment. And then trying to also drive the results of the business and report on those results. And then this last year, we actually decided to go to try to maximize our shareholder value and investment. And one of the ways we felt like we could do that, we felt like the public markets were not valuing the company as they should. Largely because we're the only company that does what we do. So if you're a hotel company or if you're a restaurant, it's really easy to compare you to other restaurants and say, or your vacancy rates to other hotel chains, and you can tell how a company is operating. You can look at their margins compared to yours. Well, there is not another company like ours. And so for us to sit there and say a 30% margin in our golf and country club division is really good, people think, well, how do I know that's really good? Because I can't compare it to anything. And so we found that we were spending a tremendous amount of time with investors just walking them through the basics of our story and our growth strategy. And we were having to do that repeatedly. and we would get some traction with the markets, but we felt like the company would be better off and investors would be, more appropriately rewarded if we took a different approach. So we started a process in about November of 2016. And that process was completed in June of this year when we announced that we were going to be bought by Apollo Global, a fund of Apollo, which is the largest private equity firm in the United States. So Apollo bought us, and we closed that transaction on September 18th. And so today we're a private company again. So I've run the whole, just from, it feels like I ran a whole lap, from private to public, and then back to private again. And so I've been here 9 years now, but I would say over that time period, it's been really challenging as we walked through, that journey.
I know.
Yeah.
From private to public, it takes a lot of time. But I'm not sure if since you bought by Apollo, so it means public to private will be easier. Is it easier because maybe there is not so much compliance you have to follow?
Well, that's a great question, and yes, I think theoretically it's easier. The reality, though, is that we issued high yield bonds that are traded as they're Reg 144A for life bonds, which means that we are still private and we don't have an SEC reporting obligation, but the bonds can be traded, and because they can be traded, we, as a courtesy to our bondholders, we've committed to filing 10-Qs for them. And all the filings that we would have done as a public company, we will continue to do that. And we also, we'll have an earnings call with our lenders that I'll have on this coming Tuesday. So a lot of the rigor and the protection of our control environment, and I think Apollo's ultimate exit plan is they'd like to do an IPO again with us.
Since you have the experiences.
So, now I'm very experienced with that here, actually. So we may get to run through that cycle again. But I think we'd position things a little differently, and we're a lot smarter now because we've done it. So that's been at a higher level. That's been some of the bigger challenges. Is just strategically, there's a lot of stress on your team when you go through something like that. And I have a great team, and they're awesome, and so fortunate and blessed to have that. But most definitely, I think my biggest concern is probably my team is tired because they've been through a lot, and so just making sure we're taking care of people and helping them still reach their goals while we're requiring so much out of them. So anyway, because we're a resort kind of community that we operate in, people are spending their leisure time with us, so they're more relaxed. But still, it's a business, and we have to run it. Just a couple of quick statistics. In terms of what's interesting about our business, our average member has household income of probably about $175,000 to $250,000 annually. So it's not the uber rich, but it's what I would call the mass affluent. So it's the upper middle class that we service. Our average member is going to visit our club or their club about 58 times a year. So for us, it is not about a transaction with a member. It's much more relational. Interaction. Because we know our members. We know their first names. We know their kids. We have a relationship with them. And so it's really important that we deliver a service that is compelling to them. They're paying us, our members pay anywhere between $250 a month to $850 a month just to come to the club. And and then if they eat there or they do something there, they pay for that too. So and they have to pay to join. So they're paying somewhere between depending on the club, they could pay $500 to join a club, or they could pay $60,000 to $100,000 to join a club. It just depends on which one they're joining. So it's a, it's a lot of, it's a big investment for a family to make the decision to join one of our clubs. And so I think what's one of the big challenges has been is we've run our company on really antiquated systems. So there's not a big need for a lot of web presence for us, because we sell memberships through word of mouth. We don't sell memberships. We don't have billboards out that say, Canyon Creek or Glen Eagles Country Club is having a special this month, because members of private clubs do not want to see their private club on a billboard, right? It's too proper, I guess, maybe is a word to use for that kind of advertising. So they want it to be a much more exclusive and private feeling experience. So we don't advertise like that. So all that to say, some of those programs have not been that aggressive, and our technology has not been that aggressive. But what we're looking at doing now is really changing the way this whole industry functions. So we've been working through how do we create a mobile application for our members so that they can conduct all their reservations on a mobile device, where they can book a reservation to golf, not only at their home club, but at any club across our network, where they could order food from their application, and while they're playing golf, have the food delivered to them on the golf course, or where they can play games with each other while they're at the club, whether it's a golf, if they want to have a golf tournament, a mini golf tournament, members could be able to do that. And so we're trying to develop a lot of that, but the underlying technology really has to be there. You have to have, and all the things you guys are studying, master data elements to it. So we have to know what every member's benefits are that they're eligible for before we can offer them the opportunity to book a reservation on an app. You have to be qualified to book that reservation. So we have to have all the data in order from that perspective. We have to know who you are. So we have to identify you. So that's a piece of it. So building the data and then understanding what kind of offerings do we want to make. If we understand that you're at the club and it's your birthday, we want to be able to push notifications to you that say, hey, it's your birthday, come in and we'll have a free dessert and a free glass of wine for you, and bring your family and celebrate at the club, or something like that, right, where we can help build that engagement with the member. And so those technologies all exist for other industries, but there's not one that exists for, we have a golf and country club business, we have a restaurant business, we have a private events business, we do weddings and corporate events at our clubs all the time. We have tennis facilities, we have retail shops where we sell tennis clothing, golf clubs, we sell all of that. So because there's so many businesses under one roof, it's a more complex business. It's not just one kind of business. And we're a fitness club. I mean, most of our clubs have fitness facilities in them. And so, it's just kind of one of those things where the technology, millennials, I have 3 sons, and a millennial is not going to dial an 800 number to make a reservation. What are they going to do? If they can't do it here, they're not going to do it, right? So they want this thing. And I have my boys, if they want to golf, I'll say to them, well, call the 800 number and book your tee time. No, Dad, I'm calling you. I'm not going to call an 800 number. And they're not. And so, I think for us to be relevant to millennials especially, right now, millennials think they all want to live downtown and they don't have a need for memberships because they just wouldn't want to do that. But as life changes and as you become more successful and you really have to be purposeful about your leisure time, a private club is a really good answer for that. And so we know that it's a stage of life kind of thing. Our average member, when I first started with the company, was about 60 years old. And today our average member is about 53 years old. So we've done a really nice job of bringing that average down by making our products more appealing to the entire family. So at our clubs we have kids camps. So you can drop your kids off in the summer and they can learn to golf or they can learn to play tennis. We have daycare at a number of our facilities so that if you're a working mom and your club is across the street from your house, you can go there and drop your kids off there. So we try to do things that really attract the whole family and bring the whole family in. And so what I love to see is if dad is thinking, I'm not golfing that much anymore, I think we should quit the club. I want the kids to jump up and down and say, no, Dad, I'm on the swim team or I'm on the tennis team. We can't quit the club, so that we have engagement from the whole family. So that's kind of how we run our business and what we do. And the challenge is to get the technologies to support that.
Okay. So Curt, in this part, I will ask you a few more questions about the industry. And you already talked about your experience in the industry. So first of all, could you briefly talk about the business process in your company and how does each department work with each other?
So that's a good question. As Janet just said, we have so many different aspects to our business. So one of the things that we do is we have every Monday, we have what we call an executive operations meeting. So we will have the heads over all the different aspects of the business. So the gentleman that runs our golf and country clubs, we have somebody that runs our business and sports clubs, and then we have somebody that sits over all of food and beverage. So that kind of aspect, somebody that sits over the membership sales, because we have to sell the memberships, then we have to get members to use the clubs once they're in it. So we have people that sell only private events. They have the head of that, the head of our technology team, the head of our accounting team, the head of our finance team, the head of our legal team, and the head of our acquisitions team, and then myself, our CEO and president, and our general counsel. So we have that meeting every Monday, and it's a really good time. It's an important time because if we're working on a project that requires cross-functional communication, that's where that happens. And that's also a moment, from my perspective, I can communicate financial strategies to the company and to the team. And then the way I do it, not everybody does it this way, but I do two other things. So we have that meeting on Monday, and then every Friday I have a staff meeting with my team. And I think it's twofold responsibility for me, and that is to take anything that came out of that executive meeting about strategy and make sure that my team's aware of it so that they're not caught off guard, so that they're not surprised, and so that if they can provide guidance or direction to make whatever the goal is even better, they have a chance to hear that from me and to know what that is. But the other piece of it is I listen to them about things they're working on so that if they need help from the rest of the organization, I gather that information there, and then I can take that back to the meetings on Monday. So I look at my staff meeting as an opportunity for me to make sure my team's up to speed on what's important to the company, but also to make sure the company knows what's important, where they can help my team to be successful meeting those goals. And then the third thing I said, I did two different other things. The other thing I do, and this is just what I do, is I have a one-on-one meeting with every one of my directs every week. And it's either 30 minutes to an hour long. They're scheduled for the whole year. And if somebody wants to call and say, hey, I don't need to meet with you, I have everything I need and I'm going to give you an hour back, I can say that's great, but that hour is really there for them. So if they're having trouble in an area or they need my help, then I can make sure that that happens. And so but we utilize those mechanisms. And then anytime we have a project that we're doing, like we're putting in our new ERP system or a new point of sale system or something like that, then we make sure that all of those projects are staffed with representatives from all the cross-functional teams, so that the sales team isn't selling a product that we can't account for, right? So if there's a new products team that's working on something, then there's accounting representation there. And of course, internal audit. I have them in everything because I want to make sure there's a control environment always present, not just because I don't want people to take advantage or do things they shouldn't do, but I also feel like the controls are important because if I have a good control environment, then I protect people from making mistakes that they're going to regret later. So I look at controls as, this is how I can help you not be tempted to make a mistake, because you're going to get caught. So I want to help you not even be tempted. And to me, that's one of the things that if you artfully manage your controls, you protect people from making mistakes that they don't want to make and that you don't want them to make, or making bad decisions. Yeah.
Thank you. So earlier I heard you talk about because of the technology advancement, the business is already kind of shift from paperwork to network. So how do you think the technology can help you to increase the marketing share?
I think it opens the world to us, because if you think about it, you have a choice. If you're going to have dinner tonight, you have a choice. Well, we're an option, but there's also your favorite Chinese restaurant. Or, mom's cooking. So we're competing with other venues that are out there. And so for us, where the technology can help is what's unique about our clubs is we are across the street from your house. I mean, we are, a lot of times where our clubs are, they're in infill locations. So there's mass affluence and mass density around our clubs. And those are our members. And so rather than having you drive 15 minutes to a restaurant, if you can drive 5 minutes to the club and pick up your dinner, that's a much more appealing option. And you're going to pick up your dinner from someone you know who's going to walk it out to your car. And I already have your billing information. You don't even have to sign anything. I can just hand you your food and say, hey, have a great night. Let me know if there's a problem or if there's something that's not there, right? So we can make the experience, you can drive away and feel like you're very important. Like you have a special way to get dinner that nobody else really has, right? And so I think with a mobile application where you could go online and you could say, hey, I'm going to be home in 15 minutes and this is what I'd like, and can I pick it up? And we can make that happen and make it easy for you, and the billing's already done, then it's to me kind of a no-brainer. So I think the technology being in place is really critical to the member experience. So we have a saying that users, people that use our clubs, are doozers, and doozers are somebody that you pay dues when you're a member. So if you're using the club, you're going to continue to pay your dues on the club. And here's what's interesting about our business, and this is what Wall Street had a difficult time with, was they loved it though, is that 50% of the revenue from our company comes from your dues. So I take price on your dues every year, so I can take a 3 or 4 or 5% increase on dues. So I have 50% of my revenue. What do you think my cost is on those dues? I mean, what expenses do I have to go against those dues? Nothing. So half my revenue has no cost associated with it, virtually no cost, and I can take rate on it. And so it's a huge thing for me to want to keep you using that club, because you're paying me $500 a month, and I don't really have a cost against that. And so, so from that perspective, it's a really compelling story for us as a business. But for you to want to continue to do that, you have to have a belief that this is a value add in your life. And so that's why we think the technology piece is so important, because it makes and nobody else. There are private clubs out there. There's 4,000 private clubs in the United States. We are 5 times larger than our next nearest competitor. There's nobody really even close. But the reality is most of those clubs are owned by a single person. So they don't have the ability to leverage all the resources that we have. They don't have the financing, and they don't have all the things we have. So for us to have a technology program in place creates a situation where nobody else could really even, why would you join a club other than a ClubCorp club? This is the way to do it, because you have more options,
because I see
more value.
You are a multi-store company, but I have another question. How do you keep those customers for their membership? Maybe they have other choices, maybe not close to their home, but maybe cheaper, or maybe they think they can offer other stuff like fitness center is close to their home. How do you keep those customers?
Well, what you do is remember how I said it's not transactional, it's relational? We make sure there's relationship there so that your club is where you want to be. We listen to our members, so every one of our clubs has what we call a member board. And so those members are, they consider it their club. If you talk to a member board, they think, well, this is our club. I mean, even though it's really ClubCorp's club, the members feel like they have a voice, and if they want to change, to put more or more low-fat items on the menu, we'll do it for them. It's no problem, right? We can make those changes for them. If they say, hey, we want to have live music here every Thursday night, we'll say, we're happy to do that. If the members come, we'll provide the music. But if members don't come, we're not going to keep paying for the music. So we are able to work closely with our members, and we have a whole strategy around how we do that. We also are constantly running, so we have these great facilities, but then we run programs. So again, the way we keep you paying your dues every month is we keep you using the club. So we send out invites every month. You get a list of all the things that are happening at your club. So in the middle of the summer, we have what we call Route 66, which is a famous highway that goes all the way through the United States. Well, Route 66 for us means at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. you're going to play 6 holes of golf, and then have a $6 glass of wine and appetizers. So it's a program that we run, and we offer free childcare. So parents can say, hey, at 6 p.m. I'm going to go up to my club, I'm going to have this great dinner, or this, I'm going to play a little bit of golf, my kids can run around and play and swim, or whatever it is the kids want to do. And I can have some time with my spouse, and then we can all go home, and it'll just be a nice evening. Or we'll put big movie screens out at our pools on every Friday night, and we'll show a movie at the pool every Friday night. So families can come, and kids can play, and parents can visit, and we'll have a big movie playing there that they can float in the pool and watch the movie. And so we make it special. So we do a lot of things like that through our programming.
So my last question is, I saw you have some clubs overseas. So what do you think is the difference between doing business domestically and overseas?
What I would compare it to is how much easier it is for a Chinese student to get a job in China versus to get a job in the United States. It's easier in China, right? Yeah. Because you're Chinese. And so for us, we're a U.S. company. It is so much easier for us to do business in the United States. Now, with that said, we have several clubs in Mexico, but it's difficult because the Mexican government is they change their tax rules, and when they change a tax rule, they don't just say starting on X date going forward, there's a change in our tax code. They will say, we're changing tax code 5 years ago forward. So they'll go back 5 years, and all of a sudden you owe taxes that you didn't know you owed. And they have done that in Mexico. And so, it's a deterrent for companies, because in the United States it's very business friendly and it's very easy to do. China is the other place where we have a couple of clubs. It's difficult because the way that the countries do business and the environments are just different. We have a Chinese financial person that is based in Hong Kong, and he spends a lot of time trying to negotiate with our Chinese partners, because it's a constant negotiation, even though we have written agreements, to get everyone to honor the agreements. And then the Chinese government does get involved, and that just makes it harder, because we're trying to walk, we have a mentality that we're going to abide strictly by the agreement. Well, if we're trying to get a dividend that's due us from our club in China, it's really difficult to get. The Chinese government has to sign off on it. And so there's this third party that intervenes. And so it's difficult. We have to have a lot more infrastructure. So we will not own a club in China. We manage clubs there. So, and because it's too difficult to own right now. Now, there may be a point in the future, and I hope there is, where it's easier to own. But right now we're comfortable managing, because we can manage that. Like a U.S. company will not pay any sort of inappropriate payment, what we would call inappropriate. Like we would never make an extra special payment to get a permit to go through. It's just hard. So we have the infrastructure, but the long and the short of it, which is an English way of saying to get to the point, we're willing to manage, but international expansion is difficult. And because of the 4,000 private clubs in the United States that we could go and buy and acquire, 3,300 of those are owned by individuals. And so our industry is so fragmented that it's really easy for us to just pursue our strategy to grow here domestically, and when the international markets are more ready and more favorably disposed to us, then we could probably do it then. Yeah.
So as you mentioned, as a company, it's much more difficult to do the business overseas compared to do it in the States, right? So for us international students, we came all the way from the other side of the earth to the United States to study and to try to find internship and jobs. Most of us really study hard for the academic studying, but sometimes we fail to get to know more about the industry and the real business world. But this part is really help us to find what we passionate about. And so for these students, do you have some suggest for them to, at what they can expand their networking and getting know more about the industry?
That's a really good question. And I've worked with a lot of students over the last, 4 or 5 years, and I can give you an observation of something I think would be helpful, because I think you guys do a really nice job from what I see, and I'm talking students in general, so each one of you may have done different things or more unique things, but what I generally see is, and in particular, let's talk about students from China.
Okay.
So what I see is, and it could be true of students from India, I don't work as closely as I do with students from China. But what I see is students will come here and they're very, you're in a foreign place. You're speaking a second language, which I do not do. So I'm super impressed that you guys do that and can do that. You heard my Chinese, it's like that much. I don't know Chinese. What I see happening is when students come, they live with other Chinese students.
Oh yeah.
They speak Chinese the whole time they're not in class. And so, but what I think is, but then this magical thing happens. You get into your second year in the program, and you need to find an internship.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're sitting across from an American, and you're being asked questions in English,
Yes.
and you're having to think on your feet and throw your best English out, and you haven't really had a lot of conversational practice.
Yes.
And so I think, what I tell Chinese students that I know is I will tell them, find American friends,
Okay.
find ways to engage with them, join clubs on campus that are not just, and then you join a club and it's all Chinese students. That's great, but join some that aren't all Chinese students and force yourself, lean into your discomfort, because that will prepare you to be more exposed to an American culture. Our church does a really nice job. We have an English conversation class, so it's for Chinese students. Oh yeah, we have it every Sunday. It's at 9:30 a.m. and we talk about all kinds of things. Whether it's some of the Texas history or how to buy a car or how to what to do if you're in a car accident. So things that are kind of useful to know. A lot of Chinese students have car accidents at first because they're just not used to driving here. And so we try to give practical lessons in English, but here's the thing, you usually have one teacher to 2 or 3 students.
Okay.
And so you're really able, at the whole time I'm, like my students, I'm asking them questions. I'm saying, hey, do you think this is applicable to you? What do you think about this? What's it like in China? I'll ask them questions because I want them to be forced to think about how to respond to me in a way that I'll understand, right?
Yeah.
Look for, I say it this way, I tell my team this too, lean into your discomfort. So yes, I understand that you're halfway around the world, but hey, you're halfway around the world, lean a little further away.
Yeah.
And just experience all there is to experience here, because if you can carry on a conversation, it's going to be so much, you're going to walk into your interview so relaxed. I'll mock interview students sometimes. I have some students that I'm pretty close to, and they'll have an interview and I'll say, okay, well, come over to my house and I'm going to interview you.
Whoa, that's so nice.
And it's really funny because one young lady, I was interviewing her and I asked her a question, and I'm friends with her. And her face was like, and then she was giving me like one word answers. And so I kind of like, okay, you can't just give me one word. You've got to embellish, like talk to me. I don't want yes or no's. I'm trying to learn who you are to see if you're a good fit for my company.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things I would say is really find a way to make some connections out of what's normal and natural, even though you're so far away. Try to do that where you can. There's a lot of churches around that you could go to a church, and there's a lot of programs that they offer. They're free. Our church has a Friday fellowship every Friday night. We'll have students, and a lot of them come. Why? Because they want to practice their English, really. But they'll come and they'll sit through a Bible study that we're having. And that's how I got to know Janet, frankly, as she came on Friday nights. And so we have a relationship now. Well, Janet, when she gets to this assignment, she knows somebody because she's done some different things, right? And I'll just use that as an example. But for all of you, I think to try to figure out what those things are is a good idea. And I would encourage students to do that, because I think there's a lot around UTD that you can do. There's a lot of host families that are willing to host students when they first come. So if you can get engaged in that up front, it just helps you build some relationships where you're not alone. Do you know what I mean? You don't feel alone when you're here. So I think I would say those are some things that I would recommend to students that are here. Yeah, it's got to be hard being here. So I don't know that I could do it. I admire you guys for what you can do.
Yeah, but I think we will definitely go and check the church, and maybe try to go to the English corner.
Yeah, it's a great class. So yeah. Yeah.
So from your perspective, for the students, do you think what are some good soft skill or some good mindset will help them, like after they come to the business world, like in a long term, helps them to do a better job?
You know, a couple of things. I think that really just having an understanding of how American culture is different from in the business world than it is from the Chinese culture. But I think one of the things that I would say, it's kind of back to that conversational, you know, the ability from a softer perspective of learning how to interrelate and connect. And then, you know, I think one of the most important things from a soft skill thing is to be confident in who you are. Know who you are. Know what your purpose is. Because if you know what your intention and your purpose is in your life, you have a much better opportunity. Relating to people is easier because you're confident about what you're trying to accomplish. And so, you know, that's, and I don't mean to get too deep here, but just to say, if I'm going to be honest with you, at the core of the things that you do, it's why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? And if you can answer those questions and you understand where you are and why you're there, I think it makes it easier for you to relate to others and to, you know, to even articulate to others what you'd like to accomplish while you're in a role or in a position. So I think that's a really important thing to kind of have down. And then just the ability to listen and observe and, you know, and have a confidence level. I see a lot of students as they come and here, and the cultures just have to be so different. I've never worked in China, but I know that you know, I don't want my employees to come to me and just say there's this problem. I want them to come and say, here's a solution to this problem that you have. You know, I found a problem and I have some ideas on how we can solve it. And even if there's 10 people in the room that are higher ranking who have an idea, I want to hear from the new person who's not as high ranking, who feels like they have an idea, who maybe deals with the issue every single day and really sees why it's caused. So it's important, and I know that in Chinese culture it's really important to understand what your hierarchy is in a room. But in America it's a little bit different. I mean, we want to give equal opportunities for people to speak about what can be done or what some potential solutions are, and we want to glean the best ideas from that. And it can come from somebody that's new or young, you know, and has a different perspective. So I think there's a great opportunity to take advantage of the fact that Americans try and want to be culturally diverse. Well, just think, you give Americans that opportunity. Because if it weren't for that, they wouldn't have the opportunity to know how to be inclusive of somebody from China, right? So you're creating that opportunity. So you add value. It's not just when you're interviewing for a job, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. I think you should be asking yourself, do I want to work for you, Curt? Would I want to? Show me that I would want to. But I'm going to ask you some questions. Like I always ask the question when I'm interviewed, I'll say, well, how are you going to help me be successful? What role do you see? And this will be my boss. I asked my boss here, Eric that you met, when he interviewed me, I asked him, what are you going to do to make me a successful CFO? And he said, what? And I said, well, what are you going to do to make me successful? I mean, I know I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to do everything I can do, but what are you going to do? How are you going to come alongside me? I wanted to know that. That was important to me. And he had a great answer after he realized I was being serious with my question. You know, he had a great answer for me. But I think, you know, you guys are really smart and you have a lot to add, a value that you can bring. And so be confident in that. You were created for a reason and for a purpose. And so, you know, by goodness, bring that to the table. And you should recognize that and have confidence in yourself along that. So those are some things that I see in students that I would love to say, you know, here's how I'd want to encourage you. So does that answer your question?
Well, this is the best sentence I heard this year, you know. It's really inspired me a lot personally. Yeah, you know,
wow.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, so, what are some lessons you wish you could learn earlier, maybe at the beginning of your career? Like you want to share with new graduate students?
Well, the beginning of my career was so long ago. I'd say there's a couple of things. And one is it's not about me. I don't think I necessarily understood that when I took my very first job. You know, and I think a lot of it comes to how you come to a position and how you look at your role in a position. You know, for me, you know, I'm a Christian, and so that's not just what I am, that's kind of who I am. And so it shapes and forms how I approach things. And so one of the things I think early on is maybe it was a maturity thing, I don't know, but I felt like it was about, well, how much am I going to get paid? And what kind of benefits am I going to get? And what's my office going to be like? And how big is my cube? And what kind of benefit, you know, what are all the benefits? And those kinds of things. And those are all really selfish things, but for some reason, it wasn't all I focused on, but I cared a lot about those things. They're important. I'm not saying they're not important. But I think if you focus on those things, what ends up happening is you miss opportunities to really add value. So for me, it was when I finally learned that it was a lot more fun in my role to contribute to the success of others than it was to try to contribute just solely to my own success. And when I started doing that, I started enjoying my work so much more. It's fun to watch other people accomplish things and not just feel happy, but do things they didn't realize they could do. That's a fun thing to do, right? You know, like when you help a student with a problem because you understand it and they don't, and then they get it and you're like so excited for them because they understand now, right? And you were able to help them do it. And you walk away feeling really good that you helped somebody do something that they needed to do. And so I think that's just, and that comes to my perspective of how I've kind of changed why I do a lot of the things that I do. It's because it's more fun to have other people be successful and realize their potential then, and I think in a way that's how you can reach yours, is when you let your guard down enough to realize your own faults and realize your own, you know, knowing where you're not good. Like there are certain aspects of my job that I'm not very good at, but I kind of know what those are now. And so I go hire people that are like the best at that, and I will tell them up front, I'm terrible at this. I really need you, you know, I can understand it, but like tax, oh my goodness. You know, I have my chief accounting officer is an incredible tax guy. And he knows, I'm like, okay, make it in simple person terms for me, because I don't understand complicated terms. And, you know, he can break things down and I can be like, okay, I get it, you know, and I can make a decision then because I have somebody that I'm vulnerable to. So I think just those, you know, being real about what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and then being focused on other people are some things that, as I've done those more, I mean, I think I've always done that a little bit, but as I've been willing to give more to those things than care about things for myself, there was more benefit.
Yeah. My last question is, do you have some like good books or website that you will you often go through and you want to share with the new graduate students? Oh, I know this one.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
Get this book and buy a membership. There's a lot of great books out there. For me personally, and this makes me feel a little awkward. I saw the question and I was hoping we wouldn't get to this question. I do read books, but for me, in all honesty, the Bible.
Oh yeah.
That's the book I would recommend. It's the only book I really ever recommend, because I feel like it's full of truth. If I want to know how to love somebody else, even when I feel like they're my enemy, I can go there and I can read about how to do that. And if I want to know what a responsible, how a loving husband treats his wife, I can go there, and it says, husbands, love your wives more than yourself. Love them, love is patient, love is kind. It is not proud, it is not rude, and it gives me all these things that I can know. And if it's how to be a good employer, there's all kinds of things there about, don't lord your authority over people. But, if you really want to be first, then go last. Because when you're the last, you've put everybody else's needs ahead of your own. And so concepts like that I think are truly life-giving, and they've changed my life. And so, in all honesty, there's a lot of great books, but the one that inspires me the most is the Bible.
Well, yeah, I heard that the Bible will give a lot of wisdom to people, but for some student like us, do you think we should read the Bible, maybe discussed with some people like you, or just because when we read it alone, probably we can't fully understand what it means, and probably for different people they have different perspective or different understanding for the same story.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is the mystery of what the Bible is. The Bible says that it's the living, breathing Word of God. And by living and breathing, to me, what that means is sometimes I can read something and I get one thing out of it, and then I'll read it another time and I'll read the same thing, but it speaks to a whole nother aspect of what I'm going through or what I'm experiencing in that moment. And different things will stand out to me based on the circumstances that I'm in, and I'll get different answers to questions I have, right? By reading the same things over and over again. So I think that's one of those mysterious things about the Bible that make it a really interesting book to read. I do think it's hard if you've never read the Bible and you don't know what it's about. Yeah. It's a hard book to just pick up and start reading at the beginning of it, because it sounds so crazy at the beginning when you're like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And, when you've been taught your whole life, that creation is not real or true and can't be, all of a sudden, that's a very weird thing to read and feel and take in a moment. And so I think there's to have context with it is really helpful. And like I said, I think there's a lot of good books. I can just speak about what's great for me. I mean, I've read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's a great book. And there's a lot of biblical concepts in his book, and he makes them very simple. And so but it's a really good book. There's Good to Great. That's a really good book for people to read. I just think if I'm going to recommend something to somebody, I would want to recommend it for a reason. And I think all those other things are good, but they're only good to me where they align with what God's Word says about the particular topic. Because there's not another book that says more about how to love other people and how to serve other people like the Bible does. There's not another book that does it, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think that the fullness of life is found in service to others. And so, you know,
your purpose.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of comes back to that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Don't clap. Yes, thank you.